Welcome to the 83rd reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Twins, a visit from Mum and a special friend. One Friday in September, not long after we'd returned home from our holiday in England, Doug, our social worker, phoned with the offer of identical twin baby boys, 2 weeks old. Their father was of African origin and their mother Caucasian. As he described them to me, I saw them in my mind's eye and formed an immediate bond with them before I had even held them in my arms. On Tuesday afternoon, the 4 of us drove to the offices of Social Services and Community Health in the Centennial Mall to pick up our babies. We named them Daniel and Nathan. Life with newborn twins was hectic, and although managing to get the dishes done and one load of laundry considered a major daily achievement for a while, caring for 2 tiny babies made up for it. Mum agreed, after all, to visit us for Christmas, and I insisted on putting the 3-month-old twins in their car seats and accompanying Brian to pick her up from the airport. I looked forward to her excitement at seeing them for the first time, other than in photos. I ought to have stayed at home with Karen and Gary because Mum paid the babies no attention at all. Her flight had experienced some turbulence, causing her to wonder if she would make it all the way to Canada. She couldn't stop talking about it in the front seat of the car with Brian. She was coming up for 69 after all and found the long trip rather stressful, which I didn't fully comprehend at the time. A familiar surge of rejection from her welled up inside me. Once she settled down, I knew she loved my little babies. She helped feed them their bottles while I busied with Christmas preparations. In fact, she and Brian were never without a baby to feed. Every time they sat down on the sofa to watch television, I handed them one. Brian drove us to Karen's Christmas piano recital at her teacher's house. The day turned out to be unusually cold, and yet Mum constantly said in a haughty manner, "Oh, this is nothing. You ought to see the weather where I come from. It goes right through you," as if I didn't know that fact. Although temperatures in England never drop to what Edmonton experiences, the rain and bitter biting wind that characterizes its weather makes one feel so much more miserable. Still, I was tired of Mum's scathing remarks about how much tougher her countrymen were compared to us soft Canadians, and anger I didn't know I possessed coursed in her direction. When Brian dropped us off, I said to him, "Don't bother coming to pick us up. We'll walk home." He questioned my decision, but he knew what I intended, to teach my mother a lesson. What I did wasn't right, and I'm not proud of it. Poor Mum bravely battled home in the stinging cold, and when she looked in the mirror at her burning face, one side flashed bright red where the wind cut against it. It was numb. A wave of remorse came over me. What if she suffered frostbite to her face and has permanent damage to the skin? Fortunately, within a couple of hours, the feeling came back. There were moments of enjoyment during her stay, but I believe our hectic lifestyle wore her out. Everything revolved around the children, and she must have wondered occasionally, as in times past, why we'd invited her. As always, she identified with Brian, and more than once I became invisible. They shared a camaraderie between them, whereas Mum and I had a distance between us, holding tension like a strong spring, diminishing the intimacy we could have enjoyed as mother and daughter. The holiday over, Brian returned to work and Karen and Gary to school. I spent my days with Mum and my time-consuming babies. I tried to make the time as interesting as possible, but because Mum and I didn't enjoy easy conversation, everything we did together brought strain. The pressure to entertain her constantly. Too busy with the twins to sit down much, I resented her need for endless cups of tea. Sometimes I resented her very presence and became horrifyingly aware of something akin to hatred of her, my own mother. What did I so guiltily abhor? Her martyr mentality, her constant complaints, the chronic, morbid liturgy of sadness and unfulfilled dreams, and my responsibility towards her, involved in a tug-of-war with my resentment. It would be Mum's last visit to Canada. She refused to fly again, claiming it took too much out of her. I suspected something else, our lack of closeness and the tension resulting from it. The day she left, I didn't go in the car with her and Brian to the airport, and as I waved goodbye from the back door, a flood of relief that she had gone washed over me. We carried on our relationship best through the exchange of letters. I always wrote at least 12 pages, full of details of our family life, plus photos. She wrote back saying how much she loved reading all the news. She wrote about the escapades of her little dog and the satisfying growth of her flower garden. She sent me cuttings from the local Colchester newspaper, filling me in on life in my old hometown. A few months after Mum's visit, I sat on a bench in the viewing area of the local swimming pool with the twins, watching Karen take swimming lessons. A woman came over to me and introduced herself. Her twin sons were taking lessons in a different part of the pool. Ruth's accent immediately gave her away as a Brit, and we wasted no time in forming a close friendship. Brian met her husband, Harold, and they also became close friends. Ruth, being 4 years older than me, said I reminded her of her younger sister, still living in England. Since I didn't have a sister, the fact that Ruth considered me worthy enough to be a substitute for hers meant more to me than she could possibly have imagined. Ruth often rescued me from mini disasters with the twins. One phone call from me and she dropped everything and was on my doorstep. I began to trust her with my heart. Unlike some of my past friends, Ruth never judged me. She and I shared so many common stories of growing up in post-war Britain. Aware of my particular emotional struggles, she didn't let me hide behind them and use them as excuses for a poor little me attitude. Although I'd obviously experienced great healing in certain areas, she sensed a roadblock. I still allowed my childhood hurts to influence my adult life. She gave me some advice regarding the uncomfortable atmosphere existing between my mother and myself. I think you need to lay all this before God and ask Him to help you understand why you have these antagonistic feelings towards your mother, she said, explaining how I needed to spend time bringing before Him every painful incident from my formative years, allowing Him to let me see each moment through an adult pair of eyes. I wasn't to hurry the process along. So I started on another journey, this time in order to discover some deeply buried truths in my past. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.